Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is honestly one of the most awe-inspiring processes on the entire planet. We're going to step right inside nature's microscopic kitchen to see exactly how a plant prepares its food.
Because think about it for a second. Breathing, sleeping, moving, eating, these are things you and I do every single day. But ask yourself this, how exactly do plants eat if they can't move? I mean, they definitely aren't strolling down the aisles of a grocery store, right?
Well, let's dive into this. For us humans, and literally all other animals, we have to actively seek out our sustenance. When our stomachs start growling, we gotta go find food. But for plants, it is the exact opposite. They are the ultimate self-sufficient organisms. As long as they've got a few basic materials, they can just sit there, perfectly still in the sun, and literally make their own food without lifting a finger.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, nature's ultimate food factories, followed by gathering the essential ingredients. Then we'll step inside the microscopic kitchen for Phase 1, capturing solar power, and Phase 2, baking the sugar. Finally, we'll look at why this matters to you.
All right, starting off with Section 1, Nature's Ultimate Food Factories.
So green plants are quite literally tiny factories. They take raw, inorganic matter from the world around them and, through a process we call photosynthesis, transform light energy from the sun into food energy. Specifically, a sugar called glucose. Scientists estimate there are around 9 million different species of plants out there, from the tiniest little flowers to those gigantic redwood trees, and every single one of them shares this miraculous ability to manufacture its own food.
Moving right along to Section 2, Gathering the Essential Ingredients. Okay, so to get cooking, our plant needs 3 primary inputs. First up is water, which it absorbs through its roots and pulls all the way up the stem. Second is carbon dioxide. It absorbs this straight out of the air through these tiny microscopic pores in its leaves, called stomata. And third, of course, is light energy from the sun, which the leaves soak up like highly efficient solar panels.
Next up, Section 3, inside the microscopic kitchen.
Now, if you were to zoom in and look really closely inside a plant leaf cell, you'd find these specialized double-membrane organelles called chloroplasts. A single plant cell can have anywhere from just a few of these to several hundred. And this chloroplast, this is the actual kitchen where the plant whips up its energy-rich treats.
So what's inside this chloroplast kitchen? Well, it's got a very specific layout. First, you've got thylakoids. These are basically folded, stacked discs that act as our prep stations. These thylakoids contain chlorophyll, which is this crucial pigment that captures the sunlight. And here's a really fascinating fact for you. Light travels in all sorts of different wavelengths, or colors, right? Well, chlorophyll absorbs almost every single color on the spectrum, except for green. It actually reflects green light right back out. And that is exactly why plants look green to our eyes. Pretty cool, right? Anyway, surrounding all these thylakoids is a fluid-filled space called the stroma. You can think of the stroma as the main baking area. All right, Section 4, Phase 1, capturing solar power.
Let's see how this all comes together in the light-dependent reactions. So sunlight hits the chlorophyll in those thylakoid PEP stations. This light energy is then used to literally split a water molecule apart. And when that water gets split, oxygen is released as a waste product, and the plant generates ATP and NADPH. Now, don't let the alphabet soup confuse you. Just think of ATP and NADPH as chemical energy currency. They're basically temporary batteries holding on to the sun's power, all charged up and ready for the next step.
Now, I actually want to pause here for a second because this specific step is absolutely mind-blowing. The specific protein complex that does this, which is called photosystem 2, is splitting a water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen just to fill an energy vacuum. This is a microscopic feat of chemistry that human scientists haven't even been able to exactly replicate in a lab. No way, right? But nature has somehow perfected this incredibly complex solar-powered water-splitting engine inside every single green leaf on Earth.
Which brings us to Section 5, Phase 2, baking the sugar.
So the crucial point here is understanding the handoff between these two phases. Phase 1 was the light-dependent reaction. That happened in the thylakoids, and it needed sunlight and water to make energy. Phase 2 is the light-independent reaction, which you might also hear called the Calvin cycle. This one happens over in the stroma, and it actually doesn't require direct light at that exact moment. Instead, it uses carbon dioxide to finally build our glucose. So, inside the stroma baking area, the plant takes that carbon dioxide it sucked out of the air earlier.
Then, this enzyme called rubisco goes to work. It fixes the carbon from the air and mixes it together with that ATP and NADPH energy currency we just made in phase 1. Through this really complex cycle, electrons get added, and the ultimate meal is finally assembled. Glucose. It's a simple sugar that the plant uses to grow, thrive, and survive.
Now take a look at how perfectly balanced this microscopic factory really is. Look at the inputs and outputs here. You put sunlight and water into the thylakoids, and you get oxygen and energy out. Then you put that exact same energy, along with some carbon dioxide, into the stroma, and you get sugar out. It is a highly efficient, perfectly tuned, continuous loop.
And finally, Section 6. Why this matters to you. You might be wondering, what does this have to do with me? Well, the plant uses some of that glucose right away for its own cellular respiration so it can grow, but it almost always produces way more than it actually needs. This extra glucose is transported as sap through the plant's veins and gets changed into insoluble starch. The plant then stores this starch away in its roots, fruits, stems, and seeds for a rainy day. But here's the kicker: when the plant saves its leftovers, it's actually making our dinner. Because animals and humans cannot make our own food from scratch, we get our energy by eating these exact stored starches.
I mean, you see this in the grocery store every single day. Our absolute favorite root vegetables like potatoes and carrots, they are really just plant pantries, literally underground storage units packed tight with the starch that was baked up in that tiny chloroplast kitchen using energy from the sun.
And it's not just roots either. The plant also packs this vital energy into the fruits we consume, like tomatoes, or seeds like wheat and rice. Every single carbohydrate you eat is essentially trapped sunlight, prepared specially for you by a plant.
But hey, food is only half of the story here. Remember step 1, where that water molecule was split? The plant released oxygen as a waste product. Well, that exhaust from the plant's food factory is the very oxygen that you, I, and literally every animal on Earth rely on to breathe. When we breathe, we take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide, which is the exact opposite of the plant's process. We are completely, inextricably linked to them.
And we've actually known about this life-saving relationship for a long time, since the 18th century to be exact. These chemists, Joseph Priestley and John Ingenhousz, ran this famous experiment where they placed a mouse inside a sealed glass jar. Normally, the mouse would run out of air and suffocate. But when they put a plant inside the jar with the mouse and left it in the sunlight, the plant's photosynthesis poured fresh oxygen back into the jar. And the mouse? It was able to breathe and survive just fine. All of which leaves us with this really powerful thought. Without photosynthesis, our planet would be dead, period. If the sun just blinked out tomorrow, plants would die, the entire food chain would collapse, and the natural production of oxygen would grind to a halt. So the next time you walk past a tree or look at a green leaf, don't just see a plant. See a tireless, microscopic kitchen that is literally feeding the world and keeping you alive. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other invisible miracles of nature are happening right under our noses?